Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Red Devil Experience. My name is Eric. Hope everybody is doing well. We got the latest Manchester United news and updates. And basically, we're going to be talking about sort of the fallout of what we just sort of witnessed after that Leeds match with Ruben Amorim's post-match press conference quotes, talking about basically that the club need to do their job. And, he stood pretty much firm and essentially he publicly, he pretty much said either back me or sack me, which is a very strong statement to make, especially if you are the Manchester United manager, because all eyes are on you at all times. And, it is absolutely just taken everything by storm. And there has been a bunch of different things and updates surrounding that sort of situation that has further developed around this situation, this potential breakdown of a partnership or relationship between Ruben Amorim and Jason Wilcox and the rest of sort of INEOS, or the hierarchy, as you will. So we're going to go through all this and talk about it. And I have a couple of sort of thoughts, opinions, and feelings about this. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. And I don't know why I say I'm going to be honest, because I am always honest, but it's just a saying, whatever. But it's starting to really bubble up inside of me. I'm getting very angry and I'm getting very pissed about this situation, because whatever you think about the guy, I always have certain beliefs of how things should operate, of how I would think my football club is supposed to do things the proper way. And Ruben might be wrong in terms of, maybe he's not as adaptable as he should be. Maybe that's a fault of him. Maybe, he doesn't take enough risks. Maybe he is super inexperienced and, he makes massive mistakes and his tactical changes are shit. That's fine. That's fine. But that then doesn't excuse the disaster that I'm watching go down from the other side of the club. And that doesn't mean that, for me, it's all Ruben's fault and that these guys get to be exonerated. And, I've been very patient with these guys. I've been trying to give them a lot of just opportunities and time to actually show that they could be serious, can provide something that might be successful. But the way this situation is going down and being handled and the information that we are receiving, it's just making me more angry and more furious at them, because there's certain things, regardless of the type of manager or the quality of the manager or how the manager is doing his specific job for the things that he can control, that other side doesn't mean that you just get to then do whatever you want. You have to still follow a proper process and an order and the plan that you made, and the plan that I always said that there should always be a plan beyond the manager, and that you need to be doing things for the football club irregardless of whatever guy we got. But there's a certain way to go about it. So we'll get into it. We'll break it down. But before we do, please make sure you smash the like button. It is the biggest help. So if you can do that for us, if you want to support us, it's one of the biggest things you could do. It gets more Reds to see it. It gets more Reds part of the community. It's massively important. So get that done for us, people. And thank you for doing that. Greatly appreciated. If you're new and you enjoy the content, subscribe. We're on our way to 3,500 subscribers. The counter's a little slow. The real number is 3,279. So we're one away from 3,280. But we are trying to get there. And make sure you hit the notification bell icon as well so you get notified when we go live. Lucky is here. Ray is here. Lucky's saying a lot of things. Lucky, please don't spam. Please give me a couple of your thoughts, because you make it very hard to read and it's very hard to do the show that way. So please just take a couple points that you want to get across, put them in one or two messages, and we'll discuss about it. I can't read everything that you put. But he says, I want us to get João Gomez. Why is that a hard question to ask about our squad? Is thin. Do what Arsenal doing, buying players, Liverpool buying players. Well, I agree, and we're going to get into it. All right, we're going to get into it. Niche fan says out. Out who? Everybody? All of them? Ray says, I think INEOS done with Ruben. Well, it's certainly leaning that way, and I think it would be fair to say I think INEOS are a bit done with Ruben, and I think Ruben is done with INEOS. So I think this deterioration that's being reported, I honestly, not to be that negative guy, I just call it how I kind of feel and see it at the moment. And, you know, I always leave room for things can change or things can go differently than how I'm speaking in the current form right now. But from the updates we got, from what Ruben said in his press conference, from the updates that we got when he did his press conference before the match and the press conference he did after the match, and the new news that we got after the match was over and after he did his press conference, it seems to me like I don't think that this relationship, I think that there is issues. And I think after what Ruben did, I don't think that there's going to be a reconcile. I think that it seems to me that they are standing on two opposite sides of the room, and I don't think they don't look like Ruben doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to he's not going to surrender his ideals, especially if he feels like he's being done dirty. And from his point of view, he might be done dirty, but also from their point of view, they might be thinking that they're not doing him dirty. As well as these guys, I think there's a couple things that's going on from their perspective that, again, doesn't sit right with me. And I'm going to get into the full detail, but we need to go through a proper process and order. So I'm going to get to the updates, and then I'll give you my full thoughts and ideas and sort of what I feel like is going on here and sort of what's going to happen here. Niche fan says, I'm Team Amorim. He's been lied to from the start. We got fake billionaires wanting to scam the fan base. It's fraudulent. And, I think right now, listen, it's a fair thing to kind of feel and kind of say. And listen, I do, for me, I feel for the manager. I feel for the guy. If these things are true, if the things he's sort of claiming is what exactly has happened, in that, he was promised transfers and now they've turned his back on him. And a couple other things. I feel for him. I feel for him from that respect. It doesn't excuse him for a lack of tactics. It doesn't excuse him for making mistakes on the pitch or, trying to defend 1-0 leads and, we don't end up winning the game. It doesn't excuse him for any of that. And that's not the point. The point is, we don't say these things to excuse him of all those things, but you can't also then ignore it. You can't also just say, well, because of all that bad shit that he does on the field, he deserves this. I don't agree with that, because I think there is a proper way that this football club needs to be run. A proper club is run in a proper way, and I think it's a mess all over the place. I think Ruben has had his own mess as a manager, but also I think INEOS is a mess in themselves, and they're making it difficult, even more difficult for Ruben, for the manager. Ray says, I am harsh on Ruben, but INEOS is the problem more than Ruben. Yeah, and I think there's nothing really wrong to be harsh on the guy. Like, I get it. The reason why I always fight back is because I've seen this fan base get into a point where we get so sucked in to one lane and everybody ends up just hammering the shit out of the manager, and they forget to look in the other direction of where the shit is coming from as well. And my whole thing is to not do that. To not do, because we can't afford to keep doing this anymore. We can't. Okay? And I think these guys, whether they're lying, whether they're just incompetent and they're just really bad and they flip-flop and they don't know what the fuck they're doing, so they're constantly scrambling to try and do things, or whatever it is, whatever the actual case is, we'll just boil it down to something simple. They just ain't doing it right. Yeah? Whatever the fine, minute details of it is, we'll be here all day trying to figure it out, because we ain't inside the club and we only get fed what is told to us. So to know the actual 100% truth from our standpoint as fans is almost quite impossible. But when you break it down to the simplest form, they ain't doing their job properly. Whether it's on purpose, whether it's stupidityness, whatever it is, they ain't doing it properly either. We happy talk board if ready to talk, says Lucky. Glazers need to do more. Listen, the Glazers ain't gonna do shit, my friend. So, don't hope for any of that. But yeah, listen, let's get into it. All right, let me get the sources or the news updates. Yeah, let's get into what is being said, and what is coming out, because there's journalists like Laurie Whitwell, who is a top journalist, and he's very credible, and he's come out with a lot of stuff. And the fan base, yet again, we are quite divided on this. I see some people are, sympathetic towards Ruben, and they're sort of backing him in this position. They're taking Ruben's side over INEOS' side. And I see other people coming out, and they're basically still just bashing Ruben Amorim with a hammer, and they're not really talking about INEOS. It's all about Ruben. So the fan base is getting split on this once again, as well. And Paul Scholes' son has come out and has essentially obliterated Ruben Amorim off of one of his comments from the post-match press conference. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically told him, "You said you were going to leave, so get the fuck out." Essentially, that's exactly what he said to a certain degree, certain level. But I'm gonna pull up a couple of these things here. So just give me a second while I'm searching for it. Lucky says Glazers out, INEOS out. And Ray says, I think INEOS changed the way they are listening to ex-players. They want Ruben to change his formation in the team. Well, I think, he kind of did allude to that. And I think that's, I think it got a little bit lost in translation there, because he did, when he mentioned if they can't handle the pressure or the criticisms of Gary Neville, then the club needs to change. And I think that's getting lost in translation, because obviously English isn't his first thing, so it's not going to come out maybe as good as, me or somebody else who speaks English, for their life, for their living. But I think that's what he was alluding to a little bit, in the fact that these ex-players, a lot of them, and the legends of the football club have been putting immense pressure for him to change the system. And I'm going to get into this debate because, listen, they might be right about that. They might be right about that aspect. Maybe he should be more adaptable. But I'm going to point out as to why it's also INEOS' fault, and they are at blame for this as well. So just give me a second, because these things are sort of all over the place, so I need to pull them up. But yes, there's a few things, there's a few different points, there's a few different reasons of the things that are going on, and we're going to try and draw some conclusions. It's very hard to draw conclusions when you don't know the full picture of what, we're not part of the conversations that have been happening, behind the scenes. We don't know what Wilcox necessarily said to Amorim. We don't know what Amorim said back to Wilcox. 100%. We only know what is the journalists are getting and how the journalists are getting them, because obviously the journalists are going to get some stuff that the club is going to feed them. And in this situation, the club are going to look out for themselves, and we've been here before. We've seen the club feed shit to journalists, to feed to the public, to paint a worser picture of the manager so that they can get to a point where they throw the manager fully under the bus. They can sort of wipe their hands clean from it, cause sort of a diversion, a distraction, so that people aren't really focused on what a shit job they did. And then they give you a new shiny toy to give you positivity, and people tend to just forget, because they're like, maybe they'll be happy with the new guy. For example, if you don't like Ruben, and they go get you a Nagelsmann. I think right now, let's put it into perspective. If we sacked Ruben today, if we wake up tomorrow and they say Ruben Amorim has been sacked, and they tell this fan base that Julian Nagelsmann is coming into this football club, I think a large majority of this fan base would forget about talking about INEOS. they'd be fully excited about Julian Nagelsmann. They'd be saying, good riddance, Amorim, you were shit, and let's go to the future with Nagelsmann. Let's go. We're gonna reconquer everything. And then they're gonna get fully delved into that for the next fucking year, 2 years, however long it is, until that thing falls apart, and they'll recycle the same thing over and over again. So there are a few things here. And I know I keep saying that, but it's just I need to get them because they were a few hours ago and the timeline is a little bit all over the place. So one of the things we talked about, one of the things we said at the end of the last show that was coming out that I sort of mentioned in the last couple minutes of the show was that TalkSport reported that there is a growing tension between Ruben Amorim and United Director of Football Jason Wilcox. Sources close to Old Trafford say Wilcox would like Amorim to be more tactically adaptable. Amorim has also been told bringing in reinforcements this transfer window is unlikely. That follows up by Ruben Amorim has cast doubt on his future as Manchester United head coach and hinted he will walk away when his contract expires in 18 months. Amorim demanded to be seen as the manager at Old Trafford rather than the head coach, even though the latter is his official title since being appointed by INEOS in November 2024. Amorim repeated several times that everyone would move on when his contract expires and suggested he had been promised more power to reshape the culture of a club that has been underperforming for far too long. What I will say about this is somebody is lying, okay? Either Ruben is lying or INEOS have been lying about, either INEOS are lying to Ruben and or they've lied to Ruben and they've lied to the public because they did change the title, okay? When they sacked Erik ten Hag and they went to go sign Ruben Amorim, they changed the title from manager to head coach. And that's not supposed to be something that is technically a it's not supposed to be for looks. That's supposed to have certain significance. A head coach does not have the same power and as a manager, as a traditional manager. A head coach has less. And football has been moving in this direction. There's a lot of examples of it. I would say if you need one, look at Bayern Munich, look at Vincent Kompany. Vincent Kompany is a head coach. He's not really a manager. Okay, he doesn't have the power that a traditional manager has. He is a piece to the puzzle. He is not the main piece to the puzzle. He is expendable. Okay, and Bayern operate in this way. They've operated in this way forever. They are also fan-owned, so there is a difference. But Bayern Munich, they operate in this way. They will make signings that will work for the manager that they have, but they also have a clear identity and philosophy. And if that manager no longer is useful or doesn't do their job, that manager will lose their job and a new guy will come in that can carry on the mission of the club. Okay? And what I'm saying is that somebody is lying is because either Ruben is lying that he was offered or promised more power than he was supposed to, or they lied to him and told him that he would get more power, got him in the job, and they are trying to not give him as much power as they once promised. Because for him to come out in the press conference and say, I am the manager, I am not the coach, I am not a coach, I came here to be a manager. Well, he's telling you that in the discussions that he had initially, when he was going to sign the agreement to become the Manchester United manager head coach, that they clearly told him, like, you're going to have some extra power. You're not just going to be a head coach. So from his standpoint, he's telling you, well, they promised me that I would have a certain say. I would have a certain power. I would not just be a coach, that I would be a manager, even though my title might say on paper, head coach. They promised me powers of manager. And now they're either trying to take it away from me or they lied about it and they never gave it to me. So that's one of the things that's happening right now. He say move forward, not move on. He did. I believe he did say move forward, but again, his English isn't the best, so it's a bit hard to nail down. Because I mean, listen, you say move forward. What does that necessarily mean? You can kind of say, well, you can continue going, or move forward, meaning like you move forward in one direction, the club moves forward in another direction. It could mean that you are leaving. So again, that's why, like, you know, it's not his first language. He does well to speak it, but it's not perfect. So some of the way that he might try to describe something, it might not necessarily be how it actually comes out. He might actually mean it one way over another, which kind of leaves us to pick up the pieces, essentially, which is not the greatest situation, Hesty. So, but there is a couple bigger things here. I think, for me, number one, this is the beginning of the end. You know, I already sort of said that, but I think that this is the beginning of the end. When you go publicly in front of the press conference, in front of the press, after you just played a match, and your first press conference before the match, people said that something was up. He didn't look as cheerful. He didn't look as happy. He looked angry. He looked upset. And those people were right. You know, I was a little bit skeptical. I said, listen, maybe it was just, you know, he was tired of the same questions. Maybe he just was having a bad day. Clearly, I think he had a bad day, because I think the conversation that he had with Wilcox and co pissed him the fuck off. And this is what we're getting now. And it's sort of been confirmed, because when you come out after the match with all that speculation and you make the comments he made, it's all but confirming that there are issues. And he even directly addressed it, telling the press, I know you guys get selective information. He's basically telling everybody, I know people at the club that are working for INEOS or backing Wilcox in them, that they are putting this stuff out on purpose. They are picking and choosing things to put out into the media so that they can paint a certain narrative, they can paint a certain picture. And the things that were coming out they're not in favor of Ruben. Okay? They are against Ruben. So I think the club is trying to go down a path where they are now trying to cover their own ass at the expense of the manager, because they are not fully behind him anymore. And they are not, you know, on the same page. They're not agreeing. So they probably feel like, we want to make a change, but I think there's a couple different reasons as to why they're not making a change. And I think it's a mistake. But before we get there, I need to get to the updates that explains why I think this. So James Ducker in the Telegraph, who is a very credible guy, he's top tier, okay? So, I mean, if this guy's getting bad information or he's giving false news, then we can basically trust nothing, okay? Because this is one of the few guys that you can sort of take for accuracy, all right? The Telegraph, James Ducker, they're very good at what they do. This came out 3 hours ago, so after the match, but it's been a little bit, and there's more things that come on top of this. But it says, or James Ducker in the Telegraph said, Ruben Amorim, who is thought to have come under internal pressure to change systems from his controversial 3-4-2-1 to a back four, has made various cryptic remarks about Wilcox in recent days and suggested the likes of Thomas Tuchel, Antonio Conte, and Jose Mourinho would not put up with being told how to manage the team. He is also believed to be unhappy about the prospect of no signings being made in the transfer window this month. It then follows up by saying Ruben Amorim had hoped to sign Antoine Semenyo from Bournemouth with United, making what they felt as a persuasive pitch to Semenyo, only for the player to signal his wish to join rivals Manchester City instead. United had earmarked £65 million for Semenyo, and it is thought Amorim hoped that the money would then be redirected into a move for another long-term target this month, but there is little indication of that happening. Okay, to me, those things are massive. And there's even another part that goes on to this, but that comes from Pete Hall. But listen, from a manager's perspective, I can understand, and I would say that I think that that's quite bullshit. This is where I don't agree with INEOS. This is where I think INEOS are doing the wrong thing. This is where I side with him in this certain perspective. You have 65 million pounds. You're willing to go get Semenyo. Semenyo chooses not to go to us because we are less attractive. And Ruben, like everybody else that's a fan of this football club, if you put us in charge in where INEOS is, if you put us in charge, if you made us the CEO, if you made us the director of football, every Manchester United player, a fan, well, I shouldn't say every, but 90%, let's be generous, 90% of the fan base would look at the January market and say, we need to go and buy somebody regardless. So we're not getting Semenyo, but there's got to be somebody else that we got to go get there. This is what Ruben is saying. This is what Ruben is asking them for. Like, okay, we missed out on Semenyo. It's a shame. There ain't shit we're going to do about it. It's gone. We got to take that money. We can't now do nothing. We can't sit here and wait till the summer to go get some target in the summer when it doesn't matter. I'm in the middle of a season. I want to get European football. I want to have a good finish. I would like to continue my job here, but we need help. And you were going to get me Semenyo, but we lost Semenyo. You can't then tell the manager, well, there's nothing that we can do. You know, if you're telling the manager there's nothing you can do, then you are not fit to be in the position you're in, because that means that you are incompetent. Okay? Because every other football club that's successful, do you think the people at Liverpool that run Liverpool, do you think if they miss out on a target because he chooses to go to another club and they need investment and they need players, do you think that they're going to tell the manager, whoever it is, whether it's Arne Slot or somebody else, do you think they're going to tell them, well, we missed out on Semenyo, so just wait until the summer and you get your midfield targets? They're not going to do that. They're going to go and find somebody else. There is, I don't know the number of players. There is hundreds of thousands of players around the world. There is no way that because you miss out on one guy, you cannot go and find somebody else, even if it's in a different position. There is no way that you cannot then figure out how to shift the money to a different aspect to cover a different position. If you can't do that, then you are incompetent at your job. You should not be director of football. You should not be running this football club. You should not be running a football club, period. Because even the lower team clubs that might have somebody that's competent, but not as much money or not as much name brand as us or pull, they're going to do the same, but they'll do it at their level. So I feel for him here, and I agree with him, and I can see how he's aggrieved on this side, because if I was the manager and they did this to me, I would be fucking aggrieved as well. And I find it disgusting that the people running our football club can do things like this and then expect the manager to go fucking succeed. And there are people out there saying, well, they spent 200 million on him. Okay, I understand that, and he should be doing maybe better with the 200 million. But the team that we have still needs an upgrade. If you get a new manager, they're still going to want new players. We still need to buy new players regardless. Whether we buy why are we looking to buy players in the summer? Because we need better players. Because the squad has to improve. So if that's the case, you can't then tell me, well, the squad doesn't really need to improve right now in January, but it needs to improve in the summer. That argument doesn't make sense. That argument is that reasoning, that logic doesn't work. It doesn't fit in any way. Now, I will go back a step, right? And I will say on this, where they say that he's had internal pressure to change the systems from his 3-4-2-1. Okay, and there is an update somewhere around here that says this. So apparently talks between Amorim and Wilcox this week did not go well. One reason was Amorim had essentially been told, again, this is all being reiterated here, but if some of it's repetitive, I apologize, but there's bits and pieces here that is sort of new information. So this is Pete Hall reporting saying one reason Amorim had essentially been told that there would not be any investment in the January transfer window, with long-term targets in the summer the focus. And then it goes on to say Wilcox and Barada had been keen to Ruben Amorim move on from his 3-4-3 formation, given how unsuccessful it has been. Now, people that have been banging on about the formation and about the system will champion this and say they are absolutely correct. Now, what I will say is they could very well be correct in their assessment. The 3-4-3 maybe doesn't work. Maybe it is unsuccessful. Maybe it's struggling. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. But again, that to me then goes directly back to them. Directly back to them. They knew what they were getting into. They knew what they were getting into. This guy presented to them his idea, and they went along with it. They also didn't think through the amount of money that it would take and the time it would take. I assume they grossly misjudged that. Because it doesn't make sense. Listen, what Ruben told us the first day of the press conference, the first press conference he took, and he said, I play my system, I play my way, and I'm going to do it my way. You can bet your ass he said the exact same thing to them when he sat down and negotiated a deal with them to become the manager or the head coach, whatever you want to call him. Okay? So they knew that willingly, and they accepted that. Okay, when you accept that, like I've been saying, you have one option. You transform the team. You transform the club, as Ruben says, because that's the only way it's going to work. And what's happening now is they've promised him some things. They're walking back on it. He thought he might get Semenyo. He's not getting Semenyo because Semenyo chose to go to City. And now they're telling him, you're not going to get anybody, when he knows that we need people or we need somebody. And essentially what they've done is, instead of sacking him, because listen, this is where we are now, okay? Now, I will say sack him. Sack him. And I'm saying sack him because it doesn't make sense. You want this guy to change his system, his belief, and maybe he should be more adaptable, as people might claim. But guess what? He's not, okay? And they should have known that. They should have known that he's not adaptable. I think he made that quite clear in the way he speaks. He will not adapt in the way that people consider to be adaptable. So it goes back on them. Again, it goes back on them, okay? You were interviewing somebody for the job to manage your club. Adaptability should be a character that you judge. And if you feel like that's going to be a problem, well, then you shouldn't hire that candidate. But they hired him anyway, okay? So now we are in a situation where these people have abandoned the original plan, in that we are not going to transform the team to fit his system. We are not going to spend the money to do the massive change that it would take to do, and you're not going to get the time. But instead of sacking him, because they have to pay him money, right? And I don't think they want to pay him the money. And also, it is a bad look for them, okay? To sack the guy that you bring in after you sacked Erik ten Hag in the middle of the season, to sack him after the season we just had where it finished in 15th and it went completely backwards, and to sack him after a year. You know, this guy has been here for a year and 2 months. He hasn't even, not even a year and a half. To sack him now, at this point, that is a really bad look for them. So what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling they're trying to do is, they have come to him and they said, listen, we don't believe in this 3-4-3 anymore. It's been a disaster and we're not going to back it. We want you to play a back four. And I don't believe in that, because he doesn't play in a back four. A manager is a guy that has a philosophy and an idea of football and a belief of how to play. And if you're getting this guy to, if you're telling him to play something that he doesn't believe, then, you know, you're asking the manager to be something that he's not. Okay, you're asking him to be fake. You know, a manager is a person that has a certain philosophy of how to play football. That should be true to them. They shouldn't be doing something that isn't part of them. Okay? And this is why I say sack him, because really, this is what it comes down to. If you're in charge of the football club and you don't believe in the 3-4-3 anymore and you're not going to back it, well then what the fuck is he doing here? Because to get him to play a 4-back, it's not going to work. He doesn't believe in it. There's no feeling to it. There's no heart. There's no, it's not who he is. So if we're not going to do this thing with him that they essentially agreed to in the beginning, well then sack him, because it's not going to work. To come to him and tell him to play a back 4, and I can understand why he's pissed off about this. And this is why he's making comments talking about I am the manager, because they are essentially telling him how to play. They're telling him how to play his football. They're not helping him try to play his football. They're telling him to play their football that they think is best. Well, you guys aren't the manager. So if you want the manager to do that, well then he's not the fucking guy for it, is he? So you have, for me, again, INEOS, you have a responsibility. What's it going to be? You trying to have your cake and eat it too. What you want, what they're trying to do right now. I'm telling you, this is what I can come up with as a logical explanation. They don't want to sack him right now because they don't want to pay the money. I think if you look at the available targets for managers or coaches, I don't think there's a lot, and maybe the guy that they might replace him with is not available, so they can't get that guy. And also, again, like I said, it looks really bad on them that this guy can't even stay longer than a season, because they hired him ultimately, and there's nothing to show for it after making that major change. So what they're trying to do, is, from what I'm understanding, they've come to him and they're trying to get him to play a 4-back, because maybe actually it'll stabilize some things, or just playing the 4-back, the team will play better, will get a little bit better results. They're trying to get to the end of the season, and when somebody comes available, they'll get rid of him, because clearly the differences is not there and they're not agreeing anymore, and they don't trust him, or they don't trust in his way, and he's not going to change his way. So it'll be irreconcilable, essentially. And so they're trying to have their cake and eat it too right now. They don't necessarily want to sack him because there's not many positives for them. But they're trying to get him to play a different system so they can still get the results. They can still finish in a European spot. And then you sack him and you get a different guy when it's possible. Now, I think I think to a certain degree that's stupid, because I don't believe getting him to play a 4-back is going to get us to the results that we need to get to, because he just doesn't do it. It's not part of who he is as a manager. It's just not his thing. So for me, the biggest thing is if you're not going to back him in January, if you don't buy into him, or you don't buy into the system and you're looking to move away, well then you only have one option, and the proper job that you should be doing is you should be sacking him today. That's it. Like, if you're not, and this is essentially, I agree with what he's saying, because he's essentially saying back me or sack me, and I think that's what the proper way to do it is. You're not playing this down the middle bullshit where we're not really backing you, but we're kind of backing you, and we'll still give you time, but also we want you to change the way you're playing and change your entire philosophy as a manager, so that you can stay here, so that we can get European football. There's no middle of the line thing here. You're either backing him or he ain't the guy and he should be removed. Okay? Lucky, please, again, stop spamming. Dude, you're all over the place. I will time you out. I don't want to time you out. I love you, but you're saying a lot of things. You're talking about Ugarte. We're not talking about Ugarte. Relax. Ugarte is far out of the picture at this point, okay? We have a problem between the hierarchy and the manager. Nobody knows what the hell is going to happen. INEOS don't look like they're willing to back the manager at this point. So just calm it down. Jason Wilcox, we got money, markets. Listen, but they don't care about that, Lucky. The issue right now is that Wilcox, Barada, and even maybe Vavel are not seeing eye to eye with the manager. So there is a clear problem, and only one of these guys is going to win. Only one side is going to win in this battle, because I don't look at Jason Wilcox or Omar, and I don't think that these guys are in the camp of seceding to the demand of Amorim. And Amorim is a guy that he's the same. He's not going to just give up his principles and his beliefs to suck it up with them. So I think we have a battle here, and I think it's only going to get worse. And the divide is going to get greater until something's going to happen, which I assume is going to end up with his sacking. Because I think if you don't back him, and you don't bring somebody in, I've been saying this before this even happened, I don't think we have a great chance of finishing. And in the meantime, now you have a guy that's disillusioned with the project, and he's here. I don't see how this is a recipe that it's going to go well. I think from here, it's going to decline. And when it declines, the results are going to get worse. The performances are going to get worse to a point where our season will be over, and then they will end up sacking him at that point. Niche fan says we don't have the money to sack him. Well, I think we do have the money to sack him, because they were just about to spend 65 million. I just think that they're not in the business of, listen, I think the longer he stays here, the less money you have to pay him, right? So if you sack him now, you have to give him a certain amount of money. If you sack him in the summer, it's less. We all know INEOS are crazy about the penny pinching. So if it's 5 million difference, they might be looking at that for a reason to try and stick with him. We do have the money. We have money, because they were about to spend 65 million on Semenyo. So they can afford, I think they got to pay him, it's not that expensive compared to some other managers. I think it's like 12.5 million. I might be wrong. If somebody can look it up and wants to correct me, or give me the accurate number. But I think off of the top of my head, I'm pretty sure it's like 12.5 million. If we sack him, something like that. So there's money. Listen, if you're in this position and you feel like he is not the guy, if you feel like the thing is heading in the wrong direction, you need to make a calculated assessment and say, we don't really want to pay this 12.5 million. It might hurt us a little bit, but if the club is going in the wrong direction and we're not seeing eye to eye to each other, that might be 12.5 million that you have to spend to steer the club into the direction you want to go. That 12.5 million or whatever it is to sack him, it might ultimately have to be something that you need to spend. But this is what I'm saying. The people in charge of the football club, they need to be able to be smart and make the correct decision. If these people are looking at it the wrong way, or it's more focused about money, and it's not more focused about what's actually best for the project in terms of success, well, then these people are wrong. Then these people should not be running the football club. So I don't necessarily agree that we don't have the money. I think that's a line that they will tell you. We don't have the money. Because, again, I think they're full of shit. Like, we were just about to spend 65 million. So this is what it comes down to. They will then tell you, well, we don't have the money to sack him, because if we sack him, then that 65 million that we were going to use for Semenyo, we now can't go get the other player. Okay, but the argument that I will tell you is, so you don't have the money to sack him, you are going to spend the player. Now, if we sack him, we won't have the money to get that player. Okay, that's great. So what happens when we don't finish in Europe, we don't get the money from Europe? What happens then? What about that money? What happens to the plans then? Because I think a lot of their plans, if they were planning to get into Europe and they're looking at summer and they're talking about signing Baleba, Elliot Anderson, and Wharton, and they're talking about signing 2 midfielders, well, I think a part of that plan banks on getting the money from Europe. So now you're not going to sack this guy because you say you don't have the money, which they clearly do, but they're going to tell you they don't because it might take away from that 65 million. It might take away from the transfer budget. It might take away from part of the plans in the summer. But if you get fucked in the now, well, what good is the summer? Because the summer ain't happening for another 7 months. Okay? 6 months, sorry. Or 5 months. That shit's gonna be irrelevant by the time we get there if we don't if this season falls apart, which it seems like it's going to fall apart, because if you don't believe in him, you don't back him, and then he's gonna stay here because he's not gonna walk, and you're not gonna sack him. I don't see how we can possibly finish in the spot that we need to finish in. I don't see how that goes well. You got a guy here that's disillusioned with his bosses. The bosses are disillusioned with the way he's going. The squad is struggling. I don't see how you get to the fucking end of the season and you finish in a spot that's going to set you up for success for the next season. I think you finish in a spot where it's going to make us worse. You're going to sack him, change him, get somebody else in, and then that manager's coming in and he's now going to have to do a job from an even worse position instead of a better position. We played back 4 today and a back 3. It was basically a back 3. I don't think we even have 65 million. I reckon that was all a fake bid. I don't know about that. I mean, listen, if it's a fake bid, well, then they're lying to us and they're lying to him. And if they're doing that, they're fucking stupid, because now they've just pissed him off because he thought he had a chance to get Semenyo. And if that's fake, well, look what you just created, the situation. In that, what'd you do it for optics? That you knew that he wasn't going to pick United? So that you did it to try and look cool in the transfer market? You did it to try and look like, you were actually doing something, but you knew the whole time that he was never going to pick you, but you pushed that. Well, now you just created a fucking stupid situation, because the fans think we have 65 million. Whatever you told Ruben, well, he thinks that we have 65 million, and he thinks that there's money to go and get a different player. And now they're telling him that there's no reinforcements coming in, which is why he's pissed. Because he's like, what do you mean? We were just about to spend 65 million on this guy. Now we're not going to spend any money? So if they're lying about the 65 million, they're fucking stupid. They are dumb. They are dumb. It's like, smart people won't do that running a football club. You don't do something like that. That's not smart. Because look at the situation you've just caused. If that's real, that they're lying about that, then they are really idiots. They really are stupid. Civil war brewing. I think it's I think we're into it. I think it's happening in real time. Like, we're living it right now. Look, he says Eric Jason Wilcox has talked to the manager about transfer plans, get players in. Listen, I'm lucky. I'm telling you right now, with the way these things are coming out and the way it's looking, I don't think they're getting him anybody. I don't think they're getting him anybody. It's one thing if it's... I think it's one thing if it's speculative shit. But when you have him coming out making the comments he's making, I'm buying it as they told him exactly what is being told to us, that he ain't getting anybody. And if he ain't getting anybody, we'll kiss everything goodbye. Because I don't see how we make it. I don't see how we make it. I don't see how United does nothing and everybody else is going to go do something. And you've alienated and pissed the manager off. He doesn't believe in this project anymore. You don't believe in him. I don't see how that works. That to me sounds like a recipe that's supposed to be a fucking cake, and what you did was you went out to your yard, you grabbed a bunch of grass, a bunch of leaves, and some fucking dirt, and you mixed it up into a fucking thing, and you put it into a form of a cake, but it's fucking shit. Nobody wants to eat it. It's not going to taste good to anybody, and it's just shit. It's just shit served up as a cake. You dressed it with icing. It's still fucking. You're still eating dirt. It's not chocolate. It's not going to taste good. It's fucking dirt and grass and leaves. Like, it's not, Newsfriend says, yeah, purely optics. Well, listen, if that's the case, and listen, we don't know that, but I'll buy it at this point, because, I mean, who knows, Niche? I mean, can we really know? Can I know if that's true or not? Can you really know if that's true or not? We can't, because we just, that's not, we don't live in the club. You know what I mean? But I would take it as something that I look at it and I say, you know what, they might be stupid enough to do that, or they might just, there's not a lot of trust for these guys, and the Glazers are still here as well. So, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. I understand for sure. So, but listen, there's a couple more things here. So let me hit this real quick. I need to do some on my phone real quick, so I apologize. Let's just sort this out. So, one of the other things from James Ducker in the Telegraph, this was an hour ago, said that that was reputably a complaint of the director of recruitment, Christopher Vivell, who was shocked by the ease with which the Fulham manager, Marco Silva, had explained how his side had exploited Amorim's system in a 1-1 draw in August. Vivell is said to have posted Silva's remarks on a WhatsApp group for United's senior leadership team and outlined a need to be less predictable. So he's talking about the system. He's talking about Ruben's system. He's talking about Ruben's formation. Vivell seems like one that he doesn't like it. He seems like he's in the camp with sort of Wilcox and I guess Omar that they don't like the system, that they want the system to change. And we've been talking for, I don't know how long we've been talking about this, but we've literally been saying that there was no point in bringing him if he's not going to play his system. And if you want to play a different system, then he shouldn't be here, and you should go and get a fucking manager that plays the system that you want. But don't try and, all these things coming out. Like, this is what I'm saying. So we're getting updates saying that, Vivell doesn't like the system, and he's shocked how exposed United were. And that could be the truth. That could be the truth. But what's not coming out is the other point. What's not coming out is anything that they promised Ruben that he subtly hinted at. Whatever promises they made to him, we're not getting that side of the story. We're not getting the side of the story that says, well, Wilcox and, Amorim, they promised him this, they promised him that, but they didn't get it. We're not getting those updates. What we're getting is updates that is, Vivell, because they know the fan base has been complaining about the system. They know the fan base doesn't like the formation, and more people are against him on it. So now what they're doing is they're drip feeding information to say, well, look, Vivell doesn't like it, Omar doesn't like it, Jason Wilcox doesn't like it because he's a stupid bad manager, and this is all his fault, and he's not adaptable. So let's all blame him. Let's all kick him in the face. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about fucking Omar. Don't worry about Jason Wilcox. Don't worry about the shit that we were supposed to do and we didn't do. Don't worry about the shit that we should be doing and we're not doing. Don't worry about that. Just worry about the fact that we all hate the system now and we all hate the formation. Don't worry about the fact that we've completely abandoned it and that we were the ones that agreed to go with it along in the first place. Worry about the fact that this guy is refusing to change. Worry about the fact that his system is exposed. This is why you're getting updates that's talking about Vivell is looking at and is saying we're shocked by the ease of Marco Silva had explained how his side exploited Amorim's system. Okay, that might be a fact. What about the other shit though? Because now everything is one-sided against the manager, okay? So now they're playing a war here in the public perception. Okay? And I don't know for what reason, because it's still fucking weird, because, I believe him when he says he's not going to quit, and I don't think he will, and I don't think he's going to walk. I think he'll fucking stay here. Listen, the damage for him is already done, okay? 30% win ratio. His image is already half destroyed. What the fuck does he care if it goes to 20? It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If anything, he might try and back himself to fucking turn it around so that when he does get sacked or when he does leave, it's not as bad as it is now. But other than that, he ain't got really anything else to lose, does he? At this point in time. And, besides the money. Besides the money. Gallagher just missed a sitter for Atletico. No way they are shaking him on 12 million. Sacking him. You were right. It's 12 to sack him. I thought it was 4. You thought it was 4. Nah, see, I always thought it was 12. But listen, 12, when you put it in perspective of, like, for example, for Ten Hag was way more than 12. They fucking sacked him. They sacked him because they thought it was the right thing to do in terms of they didn't want to head in that direction with him. And they said it was the benefit of the doubt that they gave him an opportunity and they saw how things were going and they didn't like it, so they pivoted. Okay, well, I would say, 1, be consistent, and 2, that's kind of your job anyway. Okay, your job is not to save face. Your job is not to penny pinch in these situations. Again, it's all good and well if you want to try and balance the books. It's all good and well if you want to be smart about financial decisions. I don't think the club should ever be stupid when it comes to financial decisions. But you can't go from one extreme, from being super stupid financially to being super, frugal with it either. You have to be weighing the options and say, if you want this guy to change, and he's literally sitting there and he's telling you, fuck you, I'm not changing. Why should I change? This isn't the plan we agreed on, and I'm not going to change. Ultimately, as people in charge, you have a decision to make, okay? And it can only go one way. It doesn't make sense to continue fighting with the guy while he's staying here. You can try and play the optic of now you're going to try and force him to feel the pressure to fucking walk so that he gives up the money. And maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's why they're getting this updates. Maybe they're trying to get people more pissed off at Ruben, more pressure on him, more hate. And maybe he just says, fuck this, and he actually walks. Maybe they're trying to test that water, but it doesn't really make sense if you can't come to an agreement and he's telling you, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want and I'm going to play the way I want. I'm not going to play your 4-back and I don't give a fuck. And in the same time, you're telling him, well, you know what? You're not going to play the way we are. Well, we're not going to fucking back you in the transfer market then. How about that? You're not going to play a 4-back. Well, we're not going to get anybody. How does that work? How does that actually work from a perspective of you running the football club? How does that work? You either go in and back him, or you say, if you're not going to listen to us, then you ain't the fucking guy. And bye-bye. Here, we got to pay you the money because we got to do something to change this situation. And you have to pay that money to change the situation. Lauren says it was 12 million before year expired of contract. Hello, mate. True to your word, you're back. Respect, of course. How you guys doing? How's everybody doing that's joining in now? How everybody feeling? Anybody got any opinions or thoughts of of what I'm talking about, of this situation that's unfolding? What do you guys feel like? Do you think more of that, like Ruben should surrender more in terms of he should just, switch to the 4-back and succumb to it, and maybe he'll get his transfers and maybe he'll succeed? Do you think he's right to stand his ground on this? Do you think INEOS is more of in the wrong than Ruben is? Do you think Ruben's more in the wrong? Like, Steph says, if Wilcox was so good, surely he could be head coach or manager. Well, listen, again, the manager thing is a bit different. Like, it's one thing to manage a squad, okay? It's one thing to be a manager. It's one thing to be like in the nitty-gritty details, the fine aspects, and manage different situations. Not everybody's set up with that. It's a bit different if you're sort of the guy that's sort of just looking at, because essentially Wilcox is the guy that sort of is looking at the overall picture and just says, yeah, I don't like that. That should be tweaked. Maybe instead of doing that, he's sort of the guy that doesn't actually do the work. He's sort of the guy that is supposed to be with the idea, right? And then the manager is supposed to be the extension of him that helps them paint the entire picture. But Wilcox is essentially supposed to be the guy that has this idea of how it's supposed to look, what it's supposed to look. So he might not be good at, for example, picking squads instead of analyzing opposing teams and, picking a specific team to play against a specific opposition, making tactical calls on the sideline and, training with the players on the training pitch, but he might be a guy, or at least he's supposed to be a guy, that sort of looks at it and says, well, we need to play this certain type of football, and we need these players to play this certain type of football and stuff like that. So it's a bit different stuff, I would say. But at the same time, if he ain't good at that part, well, then he's fucking useless, because he ain't going to do a good job. He needs to work with the manager. And if the manager and the director of football don't see eye to eye each other and they can't work with each other, well, then we have a problem in the system. We have a problem in the machine. And when you have a problem in the machine, they're either going to come to an agreement together and settle differences, and then maybe you can try and work past it and move forward together. But if either one of them are unwilling to do that, well, then it's just not going to work out, is it? Lucky says, if I was manager, I would be doing same. You're not going to help us in the transfer market. Lauren says, I think he needs his players back from AFCON and injury and a decision on Kobe Mainu. Nish says, we're a skint club. Hopefully it can get so bad the Glazers decide to sell and Sheikh Jassim can buy us. Well, that's another thing, Nish. I don't know if that works out. I listen, I will tell you right off the bat, if that's a scenario that can actually happen, I'll be happy for it to happen. You know what I mean? But I have my reservations and I have my concerns about that, because I just kind of feel like there's a whole aspect to that we as fans don't really see. We don't really know. Obviously, the Glazers own the club. They can see the entire picture. We can't. We can't see the financials to a certain degree. We don't know the nitty-gritty details. INEOS know it, because by law they had to see the entire fucking thing before they bought the club. The Glazers had to show them everything, so they know it. The Glazers know it. We don't know it. And to me, I wouldn't trust the Glazers, for anything. Not even a cent, not even an ounce, not even a drop, not even a little bit, not on anything ever. Ever. So I don't trust them in that. If it gets so bad, how bad does it have to be? And then I still think these guys are so fucking greedy and they're so evil that even if the club was brought into the championship, these guys would then be like, well, we're not selling it now because we're not going to get the money that we once had. If we had 4.5 billion, 5 billion, 6 billion sitting on the table, and now, we're in the championship and we can only get 2.5 billion, we ain't fucking selling it. And I think they wouldn't. I think they would sort of be like Barcelona to a certain degree. They would be pulling to a certain degree all these fucking financial little bullshit things they can do to just continue to stay there and try and get the value back up. So I think these guys are so bad and so evil, they would suck us to the ultimate, lowest point. And I think that lowest point would be ultimate destruction. I think it would be ultimate destruction. The path back from that is so removed from where we are now. Because where we are now, if they just go and somebody like a Sheikh Jassim or something, somebody with a lot of money that doesn't want to operate this football club in a way to just solely make money, but their goal is to obviously be successful and spend a lot of money to make it happen and spend it correctly, I think from where we are now, I think that, launches us into the stratosphere. But if you suck us all the fucking way down and you make this club absolutely demolished on all fronts, detrimental, like death level things, that path back is not straightforward. 15 likes, 22 watching. Yes, Steph, thank you. Hold on. I missed a couple things. Hesty says, even if it's not for Ruben's system, even they would sack him, this team still needs new players now. And that's sort of one of the major points. And this is what I'm saying. So, and I've been saying this for a long time. I've been saying there's a lot of things that they should be doing. If you're operating the football club correctly, there's a lot of things that you should be doing for the football club, irregardless of whoever that guy is under the title head coach. Because ultimately, you're running the football club. We should not be in a situation, and other football clubs aren't run like this, okay? Look at, and I guess this season isn't the greatest example, but what I'm saying is, look at Klopp. He's there. He leaves. He retires, yeah? Okay, Liverpool are still basically a similar Liverpool, and they got in Arne Slot. Like, they didn't just, like, completely 100% die because now Klopp is gone. They're still operating in a similar fashion. They still have a similar identity that they were doing under Klopp. It's not like it just died with Klopp. Is there going to be changes and growing pains? Sure, there's always going to happen. The same will probably happen to City when Pep actually leaves. But it's not going to be like as soon as Pep leaves, now City is going to become a team that ends up in fucking 8th place. You know, they might not be as dominant. It might be different. But they're not. It's not just all. You know, it's not just all Pep. It's not just all Klopp. It's not just all fucking Arteta. The club is set up in a way that they have their own identity and they have their own project and the idea that they go forward with. So we're not doing that. And you have to be doing that. And that's the whole thing I'm saying. You know, I've had people come into this channel before and tell me, well, and some of them are saying it now. They're like, well, he had 200 million spent on him. Why should he get any more money? And it's like, you're missing the point. It's not about him really getting the money. It's not about him. They should be, we need players regardless. They should be buying regardless. That's how the club should be being run. Again, it shouldn't be for Ruben. It should be something that Ruben can use, but it also has to be something that goes past Ruben. Because if Ruben fails or Ruben decides he wants to leave, what happens then? What are we doing? Aren't we doing the same thing that we've done for the past 12 years, where we went and we bought a bunch of players specifically for managers? Those managers got sacked. It didn't work for whatever reasons. They leave this football club, we get in a new manager, and that manager can't use that player. So we have now just spent 60 million, 70 million, 80 million, 55 million on a player that we just signed a year ago. The manager is no longer here, and now we can't use that player. And we also can't sell that player because they don't want to sell him, or they gave him a stupid contract and nobody wants to pay that wage. So now we're stuck with the player that we can't get money back with. The manager can't use him because it doesn't work for that manager. Okay? This is the mess that we are constantly in. And until we fix this, we're going to continue to be shit. Because you can't be doing these things. You can't be operating in this way. This is not the successful way to operate the football club. Okay, nobody likes it when I say, look at Liverpool, look at City, because nobody wants to be compared to our rivals. But I'm sorry, when we are fucking shit and we are struggling to find a blueprint to succeed, and they all have blueprints that are succeeding, and you look at their individual projects and things are different, but there are some key core similarities in the project, that just tells me, well, at a key core concept, your football club needs to be doing this. Any football club and every football club needs to be doing this, and most of them do, which is why a lot of them are in a lot better shape than we are. And it seems why clubs that were once used to be very far away from us have now even surpassed us in terms of regular form in the table. You know, how is it that we are a team that is now struggling to even get into Europe and Aston Villa is ahead of us? Okay, they're not ahead of us in name, like in stature, but in terms of competing, in terms of being strong and consistent, they're ahead of us. Like, they have better consistency than us. They have better consistency than us. We are a fucking mess because of the things that we are doing. Wilcox and Barada would outvote Ruben on transfer targets, for instance. Yeah, and if they get Vivell in there, I don't know if Vivell has part of that power. I think he does, because he's part of sort of the scouting setup, and maybe he has a say as well, and they've given him some power. And I assume Sir Jim probably has a vote. So he could get quite outnumbered. Now listen, that's just part of the business. Okay? Unfortunately, that's part of the business. We can't really complain about that because it goes both ways. All right? They can outvote the manager, but if the decision is correct, right? If they are on the money, if they know what they're talking about, if they understand what they're looking at, if they are good at their job, and the manager says, well, I prefer this striker over that striker, and they actually analyze and they know what they're looking at, and they say, no, we know for sure if we go get this guy, it's better for the club as a whole in terms of the money we're spending, to be better all around, because we could use, instead of spending 70 million on this guy, we can spend 40 and we can use that money to go get this player for that. This is what I'm saying. It's a lot of dominoes effects. You have to make the right call. You make a bad call on one player, it can have a negative effect for the rest of the plan that you got going on. So I will use it in the case of, I think in hindsight, now we can make an argument. Maybe they should have spent the money for Ollie Watkins because they spent a lot of money on Sesko. And yes, the age thing isn't great, right? Because the resale value is not a good look for us. And maybe we wouldn't get a good resale out of it if we had to go move him on. And we'd probably lose money in the end. But the trade-off is you had Ruben asking for Ollie Watkins and maybe Gyökeres, but Gyökeres seemed to be out of the picture because we didn't have Champions League, so he wasn't going to come to us. So he's asking for Ollie Watkins, and they decided not to go with Ollie Watkins, probably for the reasons of the amount of money, the age, etc. Which, fine. At that point, you can say, okay, valid argument on this side. He wants experience. He wants a proven player. They're looking sort of, what I would say is they're doing a bit of their job in terms of they're looking sort of for the future of United in terms of you're spending this amount of money. Is this going to damage sort of the resale value and stuff like that? But ultimately, that call has to be correct. If you choose to go and get Sesko, okay, and Sesko starts struggling, and the team is struggling because we have a striker that's struggling, okay? And now we don't know the answer. Maybe Ollie Watkins wouldn't be that great, but I mean, Ollie Watkins is scoring goals, and we know what he can do in the Premier League. And you would like to think, and you would like to say, well, listen, he's been doing it for a while, so you kind of know what you're getting. And I would think on paper at least, you say, listen, Ollie Watkins wouldn't be struggling the way Sesko's struggling, and we would probably have more goals from Ollie Watkins playing than Sesko's playing, okay? And I'm not hating on Sesko. I'm just saying, when you make that decision, okay, if you misjudge that, well, now you fucked up the whole thing, okay? Because you've overruled the manager, which I have no problem, but you didn't get that call right. You got that call wrong. But who ultimately suffers the most? Because you got that call wrong. The manager suffers the most because now he's got a guy that he needs to try and make better, but also it's not the same. You got a guy that was more ready to go, was more proven, and could have probably gave us more goals by now and needs less work, and it could have gotten us more points. We could have been in a better position. We could have won more games with him. You can make that argument. But that's not the case that we have. So, listen, when you override the manager, it only works if the guy that you're getting, if you're on the money, okay? Because, again, the manager shouldn't get every single guy he wants because they're not always right. That's the point of them having their job. They're supposed to assess that. It happens at City, like, in a different way. It happens at the other clubs as well, but, like, for sure, like, Pep might say, like, I need a centre mid, or I need a right back or whatever. And he might say, like, I got a guy or two that I think about it, but they got excellent guys there that will, not only will they look at the guys that Pep asks for, but they'll also look at another 6-7 people that also are similar to those players. And that guy will come back to Pep and say, listen, I looked into it. That guy, he's not that bad, but there's also this other guy that he's actually really good. And he does a few things better in this position than the guy that you asked me for. What you want to do about it? And then Pep will give his 2 cents, and then they'll go back and they'll discuss it between their team, and then ultimately they'll make the decision. Pep doesn't get every player that he asks for. But because those guys are good at their job, and they haven't let him down, he's not really bothered. So when they get him a player that he doesn't ask for, he trusts them. Because he's like, all right, I'll be able to use this guy. Now, if they get it wrong, they usually go and rectify it by getting him a different player and getting rid of that player. But we don't do those things, do we? We don't operate that way. You know, we get you a player, all of a sudden that player is stuck here. You got to use him. You got to make him better. But sorry, but I mean, like, if you guys fucked it up and he ain't that good, why I got to turn shit into gold? Okay? They ain't that good. Like, you're giving me something that's shit. That's not going to work. This doesn't work for what we're doing. Move them on. Get me somebody that works. Be proper football club. Operate in the way you're supposed to. We don't do that, though. We don't do that. Ray says, for me, Ruben should stick to his game. The only chance I will do change players that not performing more. Well, I think he can only do that to a certain extent in terms of he needs the players back. That's sort of a problem that he can't even really do right now. And again, I don't think I just think when he looks at sort of the youth, he just doesn't like that gamble. He just doesn't like it. You know, you could disagree with it. You could think that that's wrong, or, you know, he doesn't have balls or whatever. And, you know, that's fine. If that's your personal belief that he should be doing things like that, that's fine. But from his perspective, it's sort of like he doesn't really have options in terms of like these guys that he's using right now in the starting 11. Like, there's just not much change that you could do. There's nobody available. Now, he did say that he expects Bruno and Mount to possibly be back for Burnley, so that might make a big difference. I don't expect him to start, although Bruno is a bit of a freak, so he might start. I mean, he's been itching to play, apparently, and he's been trying to get back. So, you know, I don't know how that's going to go, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them are on the bench. But even if both of them are on the bench, I'm taking both of them on the bench and they get 30 minutes than not having them at all. Because maybe we could get something out of the 30 minutes that they can play if we need it. If we need it. DJ says, United managers need to be brave, take chances sometimes, back to the wall through on the kids, but no, Amorim hates our academy. Unforgivable. Again, see, like, I don't think, like you say hate, I don't think it's a hate. I think he's just being real, man. I think he's being real. I think the rest of them are being real. I don't think it's all on Amorim either. I think right now, you could say it's all on Amorim because, I mean, they're being called up into the substitute spots. But there's a process that they go through that. There is an under-21s coach. And there is an under-18s manager. And you also know that there's people in the development of the youth players. Like, their job is to oversee the development of these guys. Now, Nicky Butt will tell you something different, but Nicky Butt's no longer here, okay? So, those guys, maybe they're bad at their job. Maybe they're not good in recommending, the players that there's to get them to push. But I would also say I would have to trust Ruben on the fact that you got these kids in training, and I would have to believe, because I'm looking at the situation and I'm like, if Shea Lacey is a fucking baller, yeah? If Shea Lacey is a baller, if any of these kids are ballers, like people are trying to tell me that they are, okay? That they can have this impact that people feel like they could, but they're not, we're not getting to see it because they're not getting the opportunity. If you're a manager in this situation and you are fucking desperate for the results and you got a kid in training that is fucking tearing up your first team, yeah? Wouldn't you put him in? Wouldn't you put him in? At that point, it's not about his age. It's not about whatever the fuck the people from the youth development told you. If you're sitting in training and you're watching this kid compete against the team that you are going to start in a match, your experienced players, and they are better than these guys, wouldn't you start that guy? So for me, I just feel like they're in training and they're probably not at that level. They probably are struggling to compete with these guys who are struggling to play in the first starting 11. The experienced guys that are struggling to play in our matches, they're struggling to compete with them in training. That's what I think, because I think there's no way you have that kid in training and he's fucking tearing it up, or he's doing better than any of them, and you're not going to use him. Especially in this situation, especially when these guys are not getting the fucking job done, especially when we're struggling. So I think if that was the case, I think he would take that chance because he just wants to win. And if that kid's showing that level, I think he would play him. But I think they're not showing that level. And then so he says, well, I think it's quite risky because, yeah, these guys are struggling and I would like to switch them out, but they're not at this level and they're also very young. And I can put them in and they can play way worse than the guys that I got in. And they probably have a higher chance of doing so, which is then going to hurt the team's chances during the match. Steph says, hindsight. I know I'm way behind in the comments because you guys talked a lot about a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try and just run through a couple things and not really hit on some stuff. So Steph said, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Maybe United should have retained the services of Ralph Rangnick as director of football when Erik ten Hag was employed. Thoughts? Well, I thought that they should have never let him go. You know what I mean? They should have never let him go. I thought they did him dirty. I think it was a massive fuck up. Steph says, wouldn't trust the Glazers to run a bath. Yeah, I didn't have an analogy, but I like that one. Lauren says, Ruben implied he is going in the summer either way. He mentioned doing his job for 18 months, then moving on. He did. And that's because he's basically saying, listen, him mentioning that is basically he's saying, like, I'm fucking done with this shit, but I ain't gonna quit. So if you want me to quit, good luck. And if you want me out, sack me. And if you want me to continue past the 18 months, well, then back me and let's come to some sort of agreement. So he said that's why he's saying that sort of thing there. Mr. Reynoso is back. What's up, boys? Dude, how far behind am I in the comments, man? Am I really that far? I lost my spot as well. So if I missed some of the things, I apologize, but okay, I found it. Liverpool overspend from a coach out of his depth with such funds. Yeah, but listen, right now it might be ugly, okay? They might have made a lot of changes, but that doesn't mean that it might not work out in 2 to 3 years' time. And listen, it might look like a little bit of a mess. I'd rather take their mess and their situation than what the fuck we've been doing for 12 years in our situation. And you could say Slot is living off Klopp's slops, and you could say that as well. But again, like, those people that are running that football club, they have had success in the modern times. They have been better than us. And I wouldn't be so quick to say that they've utterly destroyed it, because it might be bad in season 1 of making these changes, but by season 2, it could be different. And by season 3, it could be a lead again. So, and I would trust that process because they already done it. And those people are still there. The only difference is the manager. And if Slot ain't the guy, I would still back those people that are there to then get rid of Slot and get somebody else in. And they have a better chance. Liverpool overspend and they killed the chemistry of the team. They might have, because maybe they messed that up. Listen, they're not perfect either. And they're not going to get everything right. This is real life. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, again, I still look at it and I say, well, in the totality of what they've done over the last, 10 years, they've got way more right than they've got wrong. So if they start getting a lot more wrong than they're getting right now, and maybe in this instant, this season, this summer window, what they did is they got a little bit more wrong than they got right, well, it's going bad. So, but I think in terms of when I look at our club and I say, well, who's got the better chance of sorting their shit out and, being good? I look at us and I look at our situation. I look at them and I look at their situation. I say, they're still fucking miles ahead of us. They're still miles ahead of us. And they definitely have the way better chance of sorting those issues that they got going on right now and propelling themselves back up than we do have to sort our issues out. Andresito says, Watkins hasn't had the best season. Add that to our drought of feeding our strikers. Let's be honest, we could have had Holland and it wouldn't make a big difference. Small, maybe, but not enough. Well, maybe you're right about that. Maybe you're right about that. Listen, it's a very sort of semantical And that could be true on the Cito, 100%. I mean, there is other issues besides just, putting it on paper and say plug and play. I mean, sometimes we don't feed the striker. But I would like to say, listen, at that point as well, like, we do create the third most chances. So I would like to think that by default, we should have a few more goals at least. How massive is it? Is it? Could be little. Could be bigger than that. But I would like to think with that guy, you would think, well, I don't think he would be struggling as much as Sesko. I think the situation is different for that. So it's not a hate on Sesko. It's not a hate on Sesko because I think Sesko can still come good. But it's just, it's a hate on the stupidityness of running the football club, of taking that chance, of taking that gamble, of not having an actual second striker, of not actually having somebody that, hey, what happens if the guy, the kid, the young player that is 22, 23 years old, that we're buying from the Bundesliga, what happens if he comes in and he has a very hard time to adjust to the Premier League? What happens if he's struggling? What do we do then? What happens then? We just gonna fucking force him through playing like we did to Rasmus? We're not gonna have any relief. We're gonna make the same mistake twice with two different people. Because that's what we're doing. We're making the same mistake twice. Because unless Sesko figures out a way to unfuck his form and, unlock something, and unless Ruben can do something at the same time for the striker to hit this form, well, so what we do now? Now we have one striker again, because I don't buy Joshua, and if they want to tell me Joshua Zirkzee is a backup for the striker, then I tell you that you're fucking idiots because he's not good at that position, okay? Every time I've seen Joshua Zirkzee go in the striker position, he has done fuck all. He is not a striker, okay? Today he came on not as a striker, and look at the influence he had in the match. That's his spot, okay? That's where he's best at. I don't want to see him at fucking striker. He ain't a striker. I don't like him there. I don't think he's good there. He doesn't belong there. He shouldn't be there. Okay? That's not proper to me. Proper is Rasmus was a striker. We should have kept him. And if we didn't keep him, well then, we're moving him on. We got Sesko, but go get somebody else. Somebody that can be there for relief. Maybe an older player. Maybe somebody that has some more experience that doesn't cost you a ton of money. Somebody that can offer some sort of relief and can carry the load. But we didn't do that, did we? We didn't do that. DJ says Ollie could have been a good signing. Looking at the lot we have now, to be honest. Sesko has the Hoyland disease 1 second behind the Prem's best defenders. Well, he might be, but I think that comes with time, my friend. I think it comes with time, and also I think it comes with what surrounds him in the team. And again, I think it's about managing the load. Like, this guy, to carry that full responsibility while trying to figure himself out, I think it's just a setup for failure. I think you're pushing him into a place where you're actually making him struggle more than he needs to be. Again, we talk about like team aspects, and this is a team sport. Well, where is the help for our player? Where is the help for our teammate? Our teammate is struggling. Where is the help? There's no help. We're in a situation where it's like, you either play that guy that's struggling because he's a striker, or you play somebody that's not actually a striker in the striker position. I don't think that helps our team at all. I think that's I think it's quite shit that our team is like that. Thank you. I appreciate that, DJ. Said there's a few channels I like to grace. RD is one of them. RDU is the other, and Forever United the other. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I know that I follow our under 18s religiously. Well, listen, if you follow the under 18s religiously, you can speak better than I can, okay? Because I don't, and I don't profess to, okay? And that's why I say I have to trust the manager and these guys on it. I don't follow them. But I would also say, listen, while they can be excellent at the under 18s, and they can be excellent at the under 21s, we still don't know what happens when they go into the first team setup, because it's different, okay? And they can look like absolute world beaters in the under 18s. But when you take that step up, it could be, sort of a rude awakening to a certain degree. So we still miss that aspect as a whole. Okay, we still miss that we missed that part of when you called them into the training for the first team. How did they actually look? Did they look half decent? Are they getting their ass kicked in training? Are they struggling to even, are they struggling to fucking beat players like Zirkzee and Casemiro? Are they fucking them up? Or is Lenny Yoro and Aiden Heaven tackling the shit out of these guys? Are they, getting tossed around and shit in training when they're doing the training like this? And then obviously there's other drills, but I'm talking about just when they play against each other, like, I think as we call it here, a scrimmage. I don't know if they call it over there in the UK, but, Benjamin Sesko player not scoring. Well, yeah, he's struggling. We're struggling. I'm just gonna jump down to like the bottom part because I'm very behind and I want to catch up. So it's not black and white. We're not asking to start them, but damn, 10 minutes left to bench Delo or Shaw and put in the youth. Stop with the excuses. These two players don't do anything. Well, again, it's not. Again, I don't think like you say it's excuses, Andresito. I'm not making an excuse. I don't think it's an excuse. I think it's a reasoning. If you don't accept that reasoning, you don't have to accept the reasoning. But I think it's a thing that you can fairly argue about in terms of you can go about it a different way. And if he doesn't think that they would have a good impact and that he has a better chance with the guys that are playing like shit instead of taking the gamble, as they would so call it, with these guys, well, I understand why he's making that decision. He could be wrong about it. He could be missing an opportunity. He could put them in and maybe they actually do something. But I can understand why he wouldn't do it. So I don't think it's an excuse. It's not an excuse. He wouldn't say it's an excuse. He would just tell you that's my answer to it. He would just tell you that's my reasoning. That's my understanding. That's my belief. Like, that is the call that I'm taking. There is a call, like the way I see it, there is a call to be made there. And there is good and there's potential goods and there's potential negatives on both sides of that call. Ultimately, you have to weigh up what you risk the most or what you determine is the best call in that situation. And I think that's what he does, because to me, that's what makes sense. And he ultimately just chooses and says that risk to do that is not, I don't view that as something that's going to help us more than hurt us. I think it might hurt us more than help us. So I'm not going to make that call. It's a judgment call. Now his judgment might be shit. It's a different story, but we don't know that. I don't know the full picture. I don't watch them in training. Maybe he's fucking wrong. Maybe if I was able to watch the training and I'm watching them in the training and I'm saying, well, they're fucking cutting it up in training. They're destroying these guys. Why aren't you fucking putting them in? But I don't know that. I don't have access to that. I could pretend like I know and just say, well, he doesn't fucking know any better, and I'm right. He should just play them, because quite clearly, Delo is useless, so just put the kid on, because he has to be better. He doesn't have to be better, he can be worse. That's the whole point of the argument. Delta Fairy, 1981, new chatter. Welcome, friend. Says, INEOS have been an unmitigated disaster. Ruben will be gone this week and we'll be stuck with these owners. It's exhausting. Well, that's part of the problem and part of the issue. And I think, I don't know about this week. Delta Fae could very well be because of, what we've been being told here. And certainly, this sort of civil war, if you want to coin it that, I think is only going to get nastier. And at some point, something's going to have to give. And I think ultimately what's going to have to give is I don't think Ruben's going to secede his ways. And if he doesn't get the results, at some point, they'll just be like, fuck you and sack him, and maybe they're doing work right now to try and plan. Because the more time goes on, if he doesn't get results, well, obviously, they're going to try and hit him more and more and be like, and we're going to get more nastier stuff coming out from the club of, how bad of a manager he is or how incompetent he is and stuff like that. So they're going to put more of the public pressure. In the meantime, they'll have time to try and sort out and make a decision of if they sack him, what they're going to do. You know, are you going to go get Michael Carrick for the rest of the season as an interim? You know, what are you going to do? Because ultimately, I don't know if they have a plan for that. Because I think they were so desperate to try and get to at least the end of the season, the full season with it. But if this deterioration has accelerated, well, now it's forced hands to be played that necessarily weren't on the cards before. So, who brought Zirkzee? Was it Ten Bob? Note. Eric Ten Hag. Yes, it was under him. It was under him. It was last season before he got sacked. There was the signing that we bring in INEOS. It was the combination of INEOS and Eric Ten Hag. So Renoso says it's wild. None of us want to admit that tons of our players do better when they leave, regardless of the league. But we are witnessing our negative impact on coach/players in real time now. Well, I always make that argument again. Like, for me, I think there's a big discrepancy there, Renoso, in terms of, listen, I think there's a bit of both aspects. Yes, it's a different club. It's operated differently. So fair play. But also at the same time, different league and different standards, different pressure. There's too many different factors to just say, well, it's 100% all United, and it has nothing to do with the player or anything like that. So, but for sure, there's got to be a bit of an aspect of all sides. Like, they do some, listen, the list isn't, there are players, but when you look at all the players we got rid of, it's a long list. It's like, you know, some 50, 60 players. Only like 7 of them out of those players have actually gone on to actually be good, right? Those are your Scotts, McTominay's, you know, Rasmus is doing well now over there. Anthony was doing well at that point. I don't know what Anthony's doing anymore because I don't hear anybody talking about Anthony anymore, so I don't know if he's doing well. But yeah, I think there's just you know, I think there's a lot of factors when it goes into that. Renosa says it's all been mismanagement at the highest level. Absolutely, and that's where it comes from. If the top is mismanaging, then expect the rest under it to be a disaster. Rasmus, Ben are on the worst highway to hell with a club that's way down that road. Yeah, I feel that. Ray says Rasmussen is better than Sesko. I don't know about that. I don't really care about that. The point is both of them are going to get fucked in the same way. You know, I don't care. It's never a competition. You know, the people that want to come out and say Sesko's way better than Rasmus and, you know, fuck Rasmus, like, no, you people are idiots, okay? Because the same shit's going to happen, all right? I'm seeing the same things happening. You're going to fuck over another player. I don't care which one is actually better. To me, they're both good in 2 different ways. They have different aspects about their game. They are 2 different players that have different characteristics. Both could have been good, and I think both can quite easily get fucked. And that's what I'm seeing. Like, and that's what I don't want to happen. I don't care who is actually better. I think Sesko has some good parts to his game, but I'm quite highly worried about how this team plays and what's been happening at the striker position. I think some things, I think a lot of I think a major hate on Rasmus, the amount of hate he was getting, I think was to a certain degree unfair. Was he poor? Yes. Was he dreadful at times? Yes. But there are other aspects that people just they want to ignore because again, we tend to do this in this fan base all over the place. And I'm just really sick and tired of it because it's like, do people not realize you're doing the same thing over and over again in all the aspects of the club? You know, you do it with the manager, you do it with the player. They tend to do it with everybody. Was the discussion and was the talk not that if we get rid of Rasmus Højlund, we will succeed way better? Okay? Where is the fucking proof in that? Where is the proof in that? Was it not the people, and I was part of that camp because I fell into it, was it not the people that told us all we have to do is sack Eric Ten Hag and we will get better? Okay? Are they not saying the same thing now with Ruben Amorim? We got to sack Ruben and it will get better. Okay? We do the same shit over and over again. We don't actually look at the surrounding problems. We don't focus on the surrounding problems. We focus in on one person and we say, well, it's simple. 2 + 2 is 4. Just remove that guy, get a different guy, and bingo, bombo, boombo, we're fucking amazing now. And it's never been the case because we've done it a few times. And hello, we're in the shit situation. People might even say, well, we're getting fucking worse. And I would say, yeah, we're getting worse because the rot is around that issue. There's a fucking cancer there. The cancer's spreading, and we're removing something that has nothing to do with the cancer. So, yeah, obviously it's going to get worse, you know? But when us Manchester United don't want to spend, Renoso, sorry. 17 likes and stuff. Thank you guys for the likes. Appreciate it to everybody that likes it. It's massive. If you subscribe, thank you. And we welcome you to the channel and to the community and to the family. And, you know, if you're new, don't be shy. Get involved in the comments. Eric says, Eric, I don't agree with you about the use. That's fine. You don't have to agree with me. And I don't agree with Ruben either. It's fine. I mean, I don't necessarily hold that belief, but I just say that I can see if that's the call he's making, which I have to rationalize it as that, because that's the only thing that sort of makes sense to me as why you would make the decision that he makes, unless he comes out and tells you directly what the decision is and explains it in detail. But that's the only thing that I can rationally understand. And if you're going to make a decision like that, that's the only thing that would rationally make sense to me if you're going to make that call. Now, again, if I'm the manager and I'm in charge and I get to see these kids in the training in the first team and I get to actually view them as going, I wouldn't necessarily do what he does. So I'm not saying that I would do exactly what he does, but I don't have the full picture. So I will trust the guy to make the call. I hope he's getting it right. I hope he's not naive in that sense. I hope he's not being sinister, evil, whatever the conspiracy theory you want to say about it. I hope that he is. I hope it is, unfortunately, as much as it would suck, because I would like to think that our youth players are players that we are going to be able to grow and use, and they're going to become top talents. I would actually hope that, you know what, they're just not good enough and that the manager is making the right call. That's what I hope. Okay? Because the latter is worse, in that the manager is making the wrong call, the players are actually good enough, and we're not using them. That's worse scenario. So I hope that's not going on, because that's bad. I don't want bad. I want good. Okay, Eric, as we say in England, set your stall out, Amorim in or out. Well, I will say, as I said in the beginning of the show, it's not Amorim in or out for me. It's back Amorim or sack Amorim. And for me, if these guys in charge of the football club, if they aren't going to back him, then fucking sack him. Because I don't want to see it. I've told you from day one, I don't want to see a manager brought to this football club to play a way that they don't play. I don't think it works. We've seen it before, and it hasn't worked at this football club. I don't think it works in general in a concept of football. And especially with this guy, he is a young, inexperienced man. Like, he's managed for 6 years. He doesn't have 15 years under his belt. He doesn't have multiple systems. He just went with this system. He just started his career with this system, and he had success to a certain level with this system. Okay? He hasn't experienced with other systems. So if you think that's an issue, that's fine. If you don't think that's the right qualifications for Manchester United, that's fine. But ultimately, don't hate him for it. Hate the people that fucking hired him, knowing that. You know, if you have an issue with that, that's them. These people made the decision to bring that in. Okay? And I would be okay with it to a certain degree if you're going to build something out of it. It might take time, sure. It might not be amazing in the beginning. But I think if you're going to go that route and you're going to build something out of that, knowing that, and you're going to support it 100% fully, then sure. Fine. But if you're not, then why do it? You know, why do it? It's pointless. It's never going to work. So for me, it's not Amorim in or out. It's back or sack him. And if you're not going to back him, and you're not going to back the way he plays, and you're not going to back the system that you agreed on in the first place, and now you want to change it, well, then sack him. Because at the end of the day, I don't care. I'd rather them sack him than watch him try to play a fucking 4-back and watch it fail. Because I know it's going to fail. I know it's going to fail. It's not who he is as a manager. It's not his philosophy. It's not his idea. He's not going to be able to implement something that's not part of him as a manager. It's just not going to work. It doesn't feel right. I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the concept of it. You want somebody to play a 4-back now? Okay, INEOS, fine. Sack him and go get a manager that plays a 4-back, and we'll play a 4-back. I don't give a fuck what we play. I don't care if we play a 7-back. If that's what you think is going to work, go get me the manager that plays a fucking 7-back. If you don't want a 7-back and you want a 2-back, go get me the manager that plays a 2-back, and I'll watch how it goes. But don't get me a guy that plays a 4-back, and then you tell me you want him to play a fucking 5-back, okay? Don't get a guy that plays high line, high intensity football and bring him to this football club and then tell him to play sit back, drop back, counter attack. Okay? No. Get whatever you want to play, get the fucking guy in that plays that way, get him here and play that way. And play the way that he would play, that you want him to play. Otherwise, don't do it because it's useless. It's not going to work. It's a good job Heaven has stepped up. Listen, it is, and I wish there was a couple more players that could step up like him because we could use it in this period for sure. Stepped up well like last season and this season. He looks even better outperforming Euro. But nobody will give Ruben credit for that anyway. So, he doesn't improve players or anything like that. That's why I think the narrative is shit anyway. Like, he won't get credit for Heaven. It's never enough. He's not doing enough. It's always we need more. So, I grew up with 20 years of success. My kids have known nothing but failure. Well, I kind of feel you in the same way. I mean, I don't have kids, but I'm the same. I grew up with about 20 years success as well. I mean, I was born in 94. I was fucking 5 in 99 when we won the treble. So I don't have the clearest picture of it. I've obviously gone back and rewatched all the things, but the memory of it happening in real life, I remember like a couple instances that happened. Very few, like 3, But after that, following all of that, and then the success we continued to have right up to 2012, that's all I knew. That's what I was born into. And if I had kids, my kids would be the same as yours, DJ. They would know nothing but failure. So, it sucks. It sucks. What the best in class don't have a plan if Amorim leaves? They don't know. I mean, listen, that's another thing. You're going to sell us, we got to get the best in class. We got to get the best in class. How are you going to do that if you don't spend money, motherfuckers? Okay? What best in class? And I'm not saying you got to break the bank, okay? Because you can get some best in class that are hidden gems. Like, again, like I've been saying over the past couple days, like to me, Sene Lemons is a player that I would love if we could get them in like 4 different positions. Winger, striker, midfielder, whatever. I don't even care where the positions are. Just that type of player. A guy that I was so unsure of because I didn't really know anything about him. He's not like, Lemons is not a fucking Wharton or whatever. Like, I don't see them play on a week-to-week basis. He's playing in the Belgium league. I was worried about the kid because I was unsure about the signing. I was like, I'd never seen him play. He's coming from the Belgium league. I'm worried about that. How can he handle the Premier League? But you know what? On that one, they were on the fucking money. Okay, we need to replicate that like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But if we're incapable of doing that, well, then they're incapable of doing their job. Because that's how we're going to get out of this. My friend experience counts. Lauren says, I want Barada to go first, Vivell, then Wilcox. I mean, I don't even know if I would get rid of Vivell, to be honest, because I think when we say best in class, I think Vivell is actually very good at his job. I think Christopher Vivell is actually very good at his job, and I think he has the track record to prove it. And now I don't know what decisions he's made that has, he could be part of sort of the shit in a massive way, or maybe he's less. But I would say obviously the onus has to come on to certainly Barada and certainly Wilcox, because those are the two top guys, other than Sajim owning it. But Barada is the CEO, so he's the boss of everybody, and Wilcox is like the second boss of everybody. So these two guys, to me, they own the majority of the responsibility. I've been saying that I think Vivell is probably the most brilliant guy we have at the football club right now. And I've sort of said to a certain degree, I might even think that Vivell is better than Jason Wilcox. Now, I don't know if he could do that job because Vivell, did he operate in that for Red Bull? He might have been director of football or sporting director. So maybe he can do that job. But I've always said that I think, look, you look at Vivell's track record coming out of that Red Bull group, I think the fact that we have him, I think he saved our ass in certain groups. And that's why I say, like, listen, even if Vivell is like, listen, I don't really like this 3-4-3, you're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to not be, part of it or whatever, or you don't have to buy into it. If maybe Vivell didn't like it from the beginning. And maybe Vivell tried to work with it, but, it hasn't gone really good. So Vivell's allowed to say, I don't really like this. Listen, we are going to have to end very, very soon. So I'm going to get in, last final thoughts, comments, last couple things to say. And then I'm going to get out of here. So I'm going to do sort of a speed run here. It's great we can all civilly agree to disagree. Well, that's how it should be anyway. It should be there anyway. I don't want people to agree with everything I say. I don't think, the community shouldn't be a mind hive. I shouldn't say, Amorim is a good manager and everybody should, I don't want everybody to say yes, master. Obviously they're not going to say yes, master, and being a bit facetious, but yeah, like, that's the whole point. We should all be able to civilly agree to disagree, and we should not hate anybody for civilly agreeing to disagree. Box says, as a manager, you have to adapt with the tools you have until you get the tools you want, and I agree to that point, and I tried to try to bring that up in a certain aspect. Like, listen, their point from an INEOS standpoint, their point is that I will buy into this. That, listen, as a manager, what makes a good manager is a certain level of adaptability. So I get that point. And people that have hit him on this adaptability thing and him not being so adaptability, it is a crutch. It is a negative aspect of him as a manager. And it makes him less of a good manager, right? Or you could say it makes him a bad manager to that degree. But again, I still think that then that goes back to INEOS, because ultimately, again, you interviewed this man. You evaluated him. You spoke to him. And I think Ruben made it very clear that he would not change his ways. So if you're sitting there and you're interviewing a guy, and a guy says, well, I'm going to do it my way, I play only my way, and I ain't going to change for nothing. Okay, well, if you sit there and you say, well, a manager needs to be adaptable, when he makes those statements to you, how are you valuing the adaptability on that? Because if you choose to say, well, it's not the greatest adaptability, but you fucking ignore it and you go ahead with it, and then later on down the line, now you're in a spot where, well, he's not being adaptable. He's not very adaptable, and we need you to adapt. Why won't you adapt? I don't know. He made it very clear that he's probably not the guy that's so adaptable. You still chose to hire him. So ultimately, you fucked up there. That's on you. You bring this guy in that's not that adaptable. Now you want him to become adaptable? You're a fool for thinking that you're going to do that. I don't know how good Vivell is, to be honest. Well, who knows how good any of them are, but I just look sort of at what he did at Red Bull Group. I like the track record that he has there and the job that he was doing there. And I think those guys are smarter than what we had. And I think he might be better than Jason Wilcox at it. So I'm not 100%, on that either. But I would like to think that. But I can't tell you for certain because, I mean, I don't know the guy. And I don't know what decisions he's been making behind the scenes. So until we win 5 leagues on the 5 leagues on the spin, 5 league games, I won't give them their flowers. 5 league titles or 5 league games? 5 league matches. Great show, big man. Good. Have a good evening. Well, we're gonna get out of here soon. So, if you're leaving us, thank you. Buck says I'm sort of torn at the moment in terms of buying. I don't want to waste any money this transfer window. I'd rather wait to use the money wisely on the first choice targets. Again, I think you can't do. I don't think you can necessarily do that. I don't think we can afford to do that because I just think that this whole thing of we can't use some of the money or we're gonna mess up parts and bits of the summer. I think them telling us we're going for these top targets, I think they're already banked in. I think they're sort of doing what they did last season when they're like, yeah, we're gonna do transfer business. All we got to do is win the Europa League. And they're telling you, yeah, we're going to go get Baleba. We're going to go get Wharton. We're going to go get Elliot Anderson. All we got to do is finish in Europe. Okay, what happens when we don't finish in Europe? What happens then? They've been telling us we're going to get 2 top midfielders. Okay, what happens when we don't get Europe? You're going to get us 1? Well, 1 ain't 2. So I think there's got to be a balance in there as well. And to me, saying we do absolutely nothing in January and we're not going to get anybody in because we have to look at the summer, I don't think that's balanced. Also, spending a large chunk of the summer budget in January, I don't think is balanced either. So there's got to be some sort of a middle ground. But we need excellent, shrewd recruitment, like you said, outfield players of Lemon's level. And and this goes back to them, ultimately, and at some point it affects the manager, and it affects the next manager after Ruben. Like Ruben will get sacked or he walks away or whatever happens with him. The next guy, he's still, listen, if these guys can't do good recruitment or they make shit decisions, well, the next manager's going to have to deal with that and he's going to have to suffer because of it. So, Sir Jim once famously said that they had to create an environment for the managers to succeed. Well, if you guys don't do your fucking job to a certain level and you don't get things correct, well, that environment that you try to, show us that you were going to create, you're not creating it. So, how are they projecting to win the league in 2028 if they don't want to spend? Because they think that they can do half and half. They think that they can cut. They think they could have their cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? So they're trying to do it on like a budget, and they're not going to be able to do it. So they're not going to be able to do it. You know what I mean? They can't. I think they have this unrealistic view that they could do it on a certain budget, but it's like, dude, you've come into a situation where we're already behind and everybody in front of us is spending money and they spend it well. And if you think you're going to be able to do it on a certain budget or being frugal, it's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen. Look at the clubs you got to compete with. When you have a Liverpool that just won the league and they spent the amount of money they did, even though it might be a mess right now, still, I still would say that they're going to figure it out way before we fucking figure it out. When you got people like Manchester City and they spend whatever money they want. When you got teams like Chelsea and they spend whatever money you want. When you look at Arsenal, okay, Arsenal used to be a team that didn't spend money. That's why they were shit for so long. Okay, now they've gotten out of that period. Now they're actually opening the checkbook. They're spending money, and they're spending it well. Okay? How are you going to compete with those teams? You're not going to do it on a budget. It's impossible. It's impossible. It will never work. Never. You will not do it on a budget. You will not do it on a budget. And if you don't have the money, well then, I don't know, man. Like, what are you doing here? Like, ultimately, it'll fail. These guys got to leave. If you're not finding ways to get more money in, and people will say, well, he only owns 28%, so why should he put more money in? Well, I sort of agree with that, but then at some point you got to say, well, listen, we can't actually do what we need to do. We fucked up. We thought we would be able to do it with a certain amount of finances, but we quite clearly need to spend way more. And I'm not going to put this money in, so I'm just going to fuck off. You know, ultimately, then it comes down to that. Fuck off, or try and convince the Glazers to sell you more so that you own more, so that you can fucking, you know, put in as much money as you want, because then you own it. But again, the way I see this football club, everywhere I look, it's sort of this sitting on the fence, trying to fucking double dip on both sides, trying to have your cake and eat it too. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. It's from the ownership down to the dealings with the managers, the amount of spending with money, the quality of the team and the quality of players. It's just all like they're trying to eat from this side, they're trying to eat from that side. And it's just like, that's not going to work, man. We're either all in on something or we're not. You know, I just feel like we're half-assing a lot of stuff right now. And when you half-ass shit, you get a half-ass result. You get a half-ass product. Like, it's going to be shit. You know, it's not going to be great. But listen, guys, I do have to go because I got things. It's the Pop's birthday. So everybody just real quick, wish my father happy birthday. He is a Manchester United fan. And of course, so if you guys could just quickly give a quick happy birthday to my father in the comments, that would be great. It is his birthday and we do got to go out to dinner and that sort of stuff. So I do got to get out of here and everybody's waiting for me. So greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for the support. If you smash the like button, I appreciate it very much. Box says happy birthday, Senor Eric. Yes. And yeah, thanks for the support. Thank you guys for, always showing love. The numbers have been great recently, the support. We're getting new members and new people as well. So I'm very happy that we're getting new people part of the community, and they're getting involved in they're adding to the community, they're adding to the discussion. So it makes me very happy. And the rest of you that have been supporting from day one, you guys, your support has never been wavering. You guys are always here doing the best. So I greatly appreciate all of that. Listen, we're not going to be able to do the stream Monday or Tuesday because I got things going on and I'm just not going to be around for several hours. And the time's not gonna, work out. So what might happen is, Tuesday, maybe you get like a short video on a certain topic based on, updates that come out from Monday. When I get home, if there's significant updates, I might just record a little pre-record, 10-15 minutes, and give my little opinion on it. And then if you guys want to, support it, go watch it, like it, and then also comment, your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And I'll do that for Monday. I'll do it on Tuesday, so the video would come out like Tuesday morning about Monday stuff, and then Wednesday we'll be back. So that's the best I could do. So other than that, everybody take care, enjoy the rest of your Sundays, be safe, be good, enjoy your Mondays, enjoy your Tuesdays, and we'll see each other live Wednesday at 8:15 p.m. UK. We will be live at 8:15 p.m. UK. I will try to set out reminders. If you have the notifications on, you should be good. You'll get notified. If you don't, hit those so you remember. I'll put out a community post. Those of you in the Discord, I'll update you in the Discord as well, just to remind you, because it is going to be a couple days since we're going to be out and missing. So Lucky says happy birthday, Eric. It's not my birthday, it's my father's birthday, but we'll take the sentiment. So, and he says INEOS and Glazers out. Yep. All right, guys, be good. Stay safe. I'll catch you.